And welcome back to the Million Dollar Events Podcast. This is a space for online entrepreneurs to elevate their events, connect deeper with other event hosts, and within their community. So grab your favorite tea or kombucha, your journal and pen, and let's dive into today's episode. Today is all about what to expect when working with an event planner. I know it sounds crazy. I feel like it's pretty obvious, but I had someone last week look at me like dead ass in the face and say, I don't understand why I need you. I don't understand what working with you saves me. So you know what? It inspired a lot of content, including today's episode. Buckle up, Buttercup. We are going to be talking about the difference between DIYing it, virtual assisting it, figuring it out, and hiring an actual expert event planner and what to expect basically from an event planner. Let's dive in. First thing that is pretty obvious, I think, you're going to get overall event management. Now, this includes a project timeline and also them keeping up with like contract dates and due dates for payments and banquet and event orders or menus or graphics or anything like that. So overall event support. This is especially great because if you're a visionary, you might not know when to do what. And having an expert event planner will help guide you on what is to be done when. If not, do it for you. You don't have to think about it. You can still be a passenger princess at your own event and guide the vision, and then have someone else completely do the worker bee, lower level, lower pay grade task work. Doesn't have to be you, especially when you hire an expert event planner. Second thing, which this is the part that really grinds my gears. You know how I know you are having your VA plan your event? Because there's no processes or onboarding or automations within your event. I say this because I have a few stories for this one. As an event planner who has contracted or worked with companies that have planned events before but might not have had a planner, and that the leaders were doing a lot and they didn't have any support. And so when they brought me on, they didn't know what they didn't know, but they also were so far in the weeds doing the working part that they didn't take a step back and didn't have that experience to take a step back and figure out where they could automate, streamline, and like living in a dumpster fire didn't have to be an everyday norm when it comes to hosting and planning conferences and events. One of my clients that hosts 12 plus ish events every single year, they didn't have sponsorship onboarding, and they had 8 to 10 sponsors every year. They didn't have attendee onboarding. They didn't have any automated processes to kick off like the registration process or automate emails sequences or anything like that. Everything was on the fly or maybe got done and was very manual. And this year, our goal is to automate as much as possible, to schedule, pre-schedule, have things done in advance. So when we're in the middle of actually being present and at the event itself, that we're not also in the back of our mind working at 9 p.m. and going, oh, these 5 things need to get done today or need to get sent out. You know, things are scheduled in advance so we can actually be present and mindful in the moment versus putting out fires and having to work super late hours. Another example of this is I attended a conference last year, and I was the attendee. I did not plan it. It was a luxury businesswoman's conference. I had so much fun. It was good vibes, good people. Music was fun. Everything was flying high. During the attendee experience, it was very obvious that they hadn't hired an expert event planner. This person said that they spent 6 figures on hiring a team, but then their VA reached out to me on 3 separate occasions asking if I had booked my sleeping room yet. Now, if you were working actually with an experienced planner, then you would know, or your planner would know, that you could cross-reference the registration list of people who've purchased from you with the sleeping room block list that you can get from the hotel. And then you can pretty much match up, you know, at least by last name, and get like a really narrowed list of people to ask and follow up if they've booked a sleeping room under the group rate. They asked me 3 times. And on the 3rd time, me being an expert event planner was like, what is going on your back end? Because this is ridiculous. You shouldn't be asking me 3 times if I've booked my sleeping room. I've had my room booked for 6 months. I've been and had my ticket for more than 6 months. I was one of the first people to book my sleeping room when the link was dropped. It really put a bad taste in my mouth, especially around my thought of how much attention this person pays when it comes to a luxury experience. So, like, they're a luxury brand. I would have expected like a white glove attendee concierge, but in reality, their VA was asking me the same question 3 times. Multiple people didn't know what time things started or ended or what to expect, what if their meals were included. I still didn't know. I walked in on that first day and I was like, "Oh, we get lunch. That's pretty cool." I had no idea. They made sure to get like a style guide out of like what to wear, but not the actual details. And a lot of coaches prescribe to intentional branding and intentional with your speakers and intentional with your affiliates and intentional with how things look and are perceived, but then completely face plant when it comes to actually showing and serving and the back end of everything. Next up, venue sourcing and negotiations. So as an expert event planner, I take over the sourcing for the venue. I look at hotels, I look at spacing, I look at layouts. I take your vision and your program and kind of what you want to serve and decide how big of a meeting space do we need? What's our preferred layout? Do we need breakout spaces? And I put together a request for proposal and I send it out to hotels that have the space, both sleeping room and meeting space that we need. And then also like kind of the vibe check we're going for. So I do all of that. And then when it comes to negotiations, hotels say, yes, we have availability. No, we don't have availability. Or this is what we're here to offer with our availability. I really go into those contract negotiations. And in another podcast episode, I talk about the things that you can get for free when you're hosting a conference at a hotel. And those are just some of the things that are like my staple concessions I request, which if you add them all up, you could be saving like 10 to 15 or more $1,000 just with these contract negotiations alone for your conference. But you don't know what you don't know. And that's why I'm here to help. And that's why this podcast exists, because I want to help you not only host better events, but I want you to make money with the events that you're hosting. And if you're making money now, then I want you to make even more with less time, energy, and effort. So the third thing is vendor sourcing, AV, photography, design, food and beverage, all of that stuff. So an event planner isn't necessarily a jack of all trades. Now, they could set up a simple landing page. They could set up and do high-level design elements. They could put together a menu with your approval. Menus are a little bit easier than design for me, at least. And they could absolutely source photography, videography, and AV. Now, if you go and listen to the things that you can get for free when hosting at a hotel, in that podcast episode, I go into detail and tell a story about a conglomerate, almost monopoly AV company that was charging $60,000 to fulfill AV to one of my clients. And then I outsourced to another company for $15,000. So that is a $45,000 cost savings just because A, they worked with an expert, and B, it was almost like a gut check. It was like, obviously we can do this for cheaper. But then I also took the time to go and outsource, negotiate, and find these people that could do a good job at the right price point for my clients and brought them in. Even with paying the $500 a day outside vendor fee, they still saved like $42,000 by not using the in-house hotel AV. And that's just one thing. Working with an established expert event planner, you're going to know like what makes sense and at what price points are reasonable and what are absolutely price gouging, because you're in it all the time. As an event planner, I have hosted over 80 events at this point since 2016. So I've seen how prices go up. I've seen how prices change based on literally the city that you're in. In one city, a gallon of coffee could be $60. In another city, a gallon of coffee is $140. for literal folders. Like, it's not anything special, but location matters, and location has inflationary consequences when you want to host New York City, for example, versus Boise, Idaho. Things cost differently. Living situations are different there too. So you can correlate back to wherever you host. Is it popular? Do people want to live there? Then it might be a little bit more expensive. But working with an expert planner, even consulting with me, I can tell you what are good cities. I have a prospective client, which I'm really excited. I'm meeting with them tomorrow at the time of this recording. And they really want to host this 100-person event in Dallas. And while Dallas is a phenomenal city, it is not necessarily in their budget. Now, they have a very specific budget they want to stick to, and they have a lot of things. They want to make this as all-inclusive for their attendees as possible. So when you have a lower budget, but you want to go to an expensive city, that doesn't really make sense. I have pitched San Antonio because I recently just went to San Antonio. We had very reasonable sleeping room rates. The food was reasonable. The Riverwalk is phenomenal. A place that people can just like go and find food fast. That is actually pretty decent at a decent price point. It's a phenomenal experience, and the airport is a whole 12 minutes from downtown. San Antonio is phenomenal to host a conference. So I'm working on selling them on the idea of not going to Dallas, but going to San Antonio because it has the nightlife, it has the food scene, it has like the sites and accessibility. Now we just need to sell them on why they need to go there instead of Dallas, which their budget is basically the equivalent of one sleeping room night, maybe two, and they want to have way more than that included. So next up, I want to talk about is maybe the layout and foot traffic. I've noticed that people who DIY their event want to do some like pretty rad things, especially like coaches and visionaries. They want to do really cool things like prayer trees and activations where people are like taking selfies and like taking photos because you want people to take photos and tag your conference, and having these stations where people can like not only talk with other people, but take content photos or create something. I love, love, love when you can create like a little piece of art so you get to like take it with you. So it's really fun way to fill time, but also give people a little something thing to do, little moment to remember the event by. But that comes with a certain skill set of being very aware of where everything is and know how to place these things in the event space so there's not bottlenecks, so people aren't standing and waiting for forever or blocking other people from like going to the bathroom or getting into the conference space or getting food at the buffet because other people, there's a line to take photos at this beautiful queen chair. Another place to be mindful of foot traffic is at the registration table. So if you're telling everybody to be there at 4 and the first activity starts at 5, then there's a solid chance there's going to be a line for people to register and get their badges and check in and basically say, hi, I'm here. There's going to be a line. So you either need to have multiple people supporting that registration table and it be very well organized, or you need to make sure that it's not blocking hotel registration or entrance into the event space or anything else that is important for other people to be able to use, get around, and walk through. That is something an expert planner will be able to help you with, because nothing's worse than as an attendee walking through a clusterfuck and not knowing where they're supposed to be, why there's a ton of people over here, and then them waiting in line for something that they don't absolutely need. But then they just wasted 15 minutes trying to get through the line to figure out what was happening. Awful experiences. As far as layout of the event space itself, I love classroom style for conferences, and I don't love rounds. And a lot of people, because they don't know better, choose rounds, but that means half of your attendees, their back is facing you. So they're either going to have to contort their body to stare at you, or move their chair around. And if they move their chair around, then they don't have a table to take notes on or to write on. Understanding human behavior and attendee experience and supporting that with experts when they know layout of events really helps when it comes to people wanting to be in the conference space, wanting to stay in the conference space, wanting to be VIP in the conference space, and being comfortable sitting for 8, 10, 12 hours during the event. The next thing up is run of show or time management. And this is really an on-site service. When you hire an expert planner, they can like put together a run of show, and that is just an agenda, but it's a little bit more detailed for people who are supporting the event. So you will give your attendee like one agenda, and then you'll have another more detailed agenda. So when I work with hotels, the food and banquet staff will have breakfast at 8 to 9, but that's what like the attendee would see. And then what the banquet staff would see set up 7:30, breakfast 8 to 9, put away breakfast at 9:30. Those little details, every single break, every single like lunch, AM break, 15-minute break, bathroom break, PM break, if you have a snack, happy hour, everything like that is broken down at a more granular level. So everyone that is supporting the event knows what's happening when. Another thing event planners help with is sourcing gifts. Now, depending on the size of your event, as an event planner, I may or may not be able to get you discounts. A lot of gifting companies, there's actually companies out there that help you source luxury gifts. And some of them have really amazing like missions. Like I have a gifting company that only supports women-owned business and people of color and marginalized communities. And they have a lot of handmade items from people in other third world countries that need income and need to support their family. And it's a way to get their items to us. It's a lot of really good feel-good moments, but there's other companies that are just out there to help you source. And I can help you do that. I have those companies in the back of my pocket, but I also source when I plan events, I look for what gifts complement the transformation that's happening. And so I go a little bit further. I look at companies' backgrounds. I look at what's important for you as my client, the value, your core values, your core beliefs, your ethics, the transformation. And I try to find items that complement not only your brand and your mission, but also the transformation. And that does take some time and definitely has intention behind it. Another thing that event planners do is registration. Not so sexy, but in my example earlier, having a smooth registration table is one thing, but also having complete like event registration and having those systems and automations set up really allows some freedom for you, because if you have your systems and automations set up, once someone, you know, buys an event ticket, they can get an automated email onboarding that says, hey, fill out this registration form, sign this contract, or here's your terms and conditions. Go and like or join this Facebook group that's event specific and a private Facebook group for the event. Then go and, tag yourself on Instagram and tag me so people know that you're coming. And there's so many things that you would have in an onboarding email. And then once they complete that registration form, then you can have another automation pop off to your planner, notifying that someone else completed the form, and then they could go and look and compile the data. And since that automation, that email, the onboarding email has kicked off and everything was tagged correctly, segmented, then you can have an entire automated email sequence hyping up your event, hyping up the location, the details, and just keeping your event top of mind super easily. But having a clear and concise like registration process is everything when it comes to setting attendee expectations, but onboarding attendees, the attendee process flow, and the overall like feeling of, do you have your shit together? If I'm looking to you for mentorship, like, do you have your shit together, and do you invest in automations and streamlining and concierge services that I can't get anywhere else? And then I want to talk about like what shouldn't be expected as an event planner. Okay, actually, we're going to recap So let's do a little recap of what should be expected from your event planner when you're planning anywhere from a 20-person conference to a 500-person conference. Um, you should have clear processes for your attendees, for your sponsors, for your speakers. You should have a clear process for how people could book a sleeping room link or a sleeping room inside of the sleeping room block. You should have clear processes on where to be when for everything. An event planner will help with venue sourcing, contract negotiations, vendor sourcing, gut checking, the price tags on your food, on your beverages, on your AV, on your photographer, on every person that supports your event because they see it every day and they know what to expect and how to budget appropriately. They should also be able to source, again, photography, design elements, food and beverages. They're called banquet and event orders, but like being able to communicate what food and when, including food allergies. Another one would be the layout of how not only the conference is laid out between the pre-function area, which is usually where a registration table is, and kind of little activations where people can do fun things while they're waiting for something to start, like the conference to start. And then the conference area itself. Expert event planners understand foot traffic and layouts and how to amplify the enjoyableness of an attendee experience versus what normal people do and put everybody in rounds and then they have to contort their body and then they don't have access to their water or writing or anything like that. Experts like kind of know how to have enough space and to lay it out in a way that everyone's happy. And you can mitigate as much traffic jams as possible. Expert event planners know how to create run of shows and do time management and communicate that with all the vendors. So that way my clients are literally passenger princesses. And I even check up with them and be like, hey, this is about to start. Expect this, expect that. And I check with them often, like hourly, so they know where we're at in the schedule and everyone else knows where we're at in the schedule. Just so everything runs smoothly and everyone knows exactly what to expect. And then gifting, registration, and overall event management. Expect that from your event planner. Now, when I say registration, that not only means the registration table itself and being customer facing, but also the registration process to make sure that we have, emergency contact information and dietary restrictions and preferences. And depending on what type of event you're hosting, that could be more detailed information about this person. Now let's talk about what not to expect from your event planner. And this could be services that other event planners offer, but I don't. It's not in my zone of genius. And as event planners, I'm already wearing like 14 hats. And that doesn't mean I have to wear all of them. Now, some event planners might offer these and not offer some of the things that I offer. So let's talk about some things that you might not expect from your event planner. Creating design elements. That is a very broad statement. So that could be interactions. Like what you could do is say, hey, we're going to have like a flower arch or a photo op or a 360 photo booth or whatever. But that doesn't mean that I'm the one that's creating the flower activation or putting it together or like going out and buying the materials or anything like that. That means I either find a florist or an event design and decor person to bring in these elements to bring your vision through me to life. And I tell them and I point and show them where they need to be on the event floor and their times and things like that. I don't have a 360 photo booth, like just willy-nilly laying around my house. So I would hire them or find them and hire them to perform that service. Those are the vendors, the vendor management piece that an event planner would do, but they wouldn't necessarily do the little things. Now, they might come up with the little things to find people to fulfill them, but that doesn't mean that they're doing the little things, like creating flower arrangements and putting up scaffolding to hang lights from. Like, no. Also, creating design elements are things like graphic design for your flyers, for your marketing, for your social media posts, for your branding of the event itself. And yes, your event should be branded. That doesn't mean that I am a graphic designer or that I even should be doing your graphics. I am not artsy like that, and that's not something that I promise or deliver for my clients. On the same in the same vein, I also don't write copy. I don't do copywriting. I do minimal tech, but I'm not a tech developer. So all of these components are things that I will either hire out for or I will instruct your team to do in a way that feels good and is in alignment with my processes and my workflows and how I run events. But that doesn't mean that I'm the one that's setting up your website, your sales funnel, your landing page, doing HTML, CSS code, or whatever. I just made that up. Writing developer code and creating custom websites for you. That's not my zone of genius, but I know somebody who does that. And then I would hire them to create the things. So all of that to say is, an event planner holds a lot of hats. Like, it is a very intense job when you're planning all these components. You are a project manager, keeping everything together. You are a master communicator, and you're also a clairvoyant because you see what's coming or where the potholes are to thicken the plot. And then you fix them, patch them before the car gets a flat tire. And if you don't follow that analogy, it's my job to see into the future of where the risks and where things could go wrong, and then have a couple of options of how to smooth those over, how to transition the event or that event timeline, especially with retreats and weather. Like, if we're supposed to go on a boat, then we need to have a backup plan to not be able to go on the boat if the weather is bad. That's just one example of how event management and event planner can help you stay calm and sane in the moment when things don't always go as planned. And that's also the power of hiring an expert event planner, because we've been there. We've done that a lot, and you haven't. And you don't know what you don't know. You've never been through this before, or maybe you've done it once and you know that it can be done better. A lot of people who come to me who have hosted retreats before, they're looking to amplify. They're looking to streamline their process. They're looking to clean up things. They're looking for inspiration. They don't want to have a run-of-the-mill conference or a basic business retreat. They want extraordinary, and they don't necessarily want to have to be the one executing it. They want to be the visionary, not the worker bee. They're the queen, not the pawn of their business. That's who I work with one-on-one. And that's who hire event experts. The people who want to be the passenger princess versus doing it all themselves because they don't trust anybody else to do it the way that they would. If this episode has been helpful, please, please, please give me a 5-star review, or just a star review, more than one, preferably, on Apple Podcasts. Leave me a comment on YouTube. Let me know that this was a good time. And also let me know if there's anything that you want me to elaborate more on. Usually when I nerd out, I get a little bit more technical, and I'm working on reeling that back because I want to make sure that this is a tangible podcast that you can take away bits and nuggets and actually make your events better and easier for you to plan, that make you more money and have a better attendee experience. Because Lord knows, the more coaches that are hosting events, especially retreats and conferences, they don't know what they're doing, and they're doing a lot of things poorly. So I'm here to make sure yours is top-notch, iconic, legendary queen, because you are. And your events should reflect your brand and your mission and your iconic energy. All right, until next time.